Chuck?
Look, I know you want your candidacy to be about a larger reform issue with the political system and the economic systems in this country. Are you at all concerned that if the abortion debate is front and center, and look, what it is today may not be tomorrow, but this feels like this is going to be a front and center issue, do you worry that that will make it harder to talk about other issues, that once you put this front and center, it can suddenly block out everything else?
I don't worry about it when it's with regard to what's happening in some of these states, because it is so outrageous. It is so extreme that a doctor would be charged with a longer sentence than the rapist in this situation. That doesn't make any sense at all to moderate voters, independent voters, moderate Republicans. I mean, Pat Robertson, for God's sake, is coming out saying this has gone to the extreme and way too far. So I think it's something that Democrats, obviously we got economics and education and health care, but if this issue comes up, Donald Trump and these legislators who passed this in Ohio and other states, they're on the wrong side of this issue, and they're on the wrong side of history.
Hey, Congressman, let's be frank. In Ohio, Democrats usually duck the abortion issue too much because you're trying to appeal to a lot of pro-life Catholics. You yourself, I think, when you got into politics, you called yourself a pro-life Catholic and moved on this issue after some time in politics. It is an issue that in Ohio, voters have always sort of been on the right side of this aisle, not the left side.
Well, voters in Ohio, Michigan, Wisconsin, they're compassionate. And what moved me, Chuck, you're right, I did. When I came to Congress, I grew up, I went to Catholic school, I was a pro-life Catholic. And then I got to Congress and I started hearing the stories of women who have had to deal with this situation. And it moved me. It moved me emotionally. It moved me intellectually, until I eventually changed my position to say, hey, I don't want the government between a woman and their doctor at all, ever. That's an intimate relationship, and they should be able to make that decision. And so these stories moved me. And what I'm seeing now in the past few days is these women tell their stories, really coming out for the first time, many of them telling their stories, sharing their stories. And I think when these stories get told and it gets humanized, it's not an intellectual debate, the electorate is going to move in the direction of a more pro-choice America.
You just brought up the fact that you got elected as a Democrat, as a pro-life Democrat. Is there room in the Democratic Party for pro-life Democrats anymore? Or should there be? Well,
I'm a big tent Democrat kind of guy, and I think that we should have room for people of all different viewpoints. And I will just say this, Chuck. It was our friends at NARAL, our friends at Planned Parenthood, Cecile Richards and their team over the years, Rosa DeLauro, pro-choice women, who engaged me in the conversation when I was a pro-life Democrat. And help me understand. So, politics is about addition, not subtraction. And so let's get this big tent, and then let's make sure we have open dialogue and conversations about these really tough issues. And what you'll find out, if you come with an open heart and you're willing to listen and respect each other's views, you can move people and I'm a perfect example of that happening. So we should try to do that with others as well.
Well, so I guess you're trying to, I'll be honest, it sounds like you're trying to have it both ways in that, saying you want to be a big tent, but you think anybody that comes in as a pro-life Democrat, the job should be to convince them to change their position.
Well, you're going to have a much better shot of convincing them that you're right, as opposed to shaming them and telling them how wrong they are. Look, we're a pro-choice party. There's no question about it. We're always going to be a pro-choice party just for this reason as to what happened. But we've got to be a big tent party, too, Chuck. I mean, we can't be turning people away. Look who's in the White House now. There were a lot of pro-life Democrats that voted for the Affordable Care Act a few years back that made that happen, provide health care for everybody in the country. So I don't have to agree with them. I got a lot of Democrats. I don't agree with a lot of stuff that is important to me. But, we're all part of the same general movement, and we need to stick together.
Would you have if you're president, would you essentially have a Roe litmus test for judges?
Yeah, I would, most definitely.
Pure
This
and
is not
simple?
something to be messed with. Pure and simple. Not at this moment in history. People could try to dance around it. I will, I will have someone who will protect Roe v. Wade. No question about it.
You said something interesting, and we played the bite earlier that and you were referring to when the Ohio law was passed, that this was basically a failing of the Democratic Party, I guess, for the last 20 or 30 years, not winning enough of these elections. You're referring to not just the presidency, but I really think it sounds like you're referring to Senate races, state legislative races, where all of these bills are taking place. And it was an interesting comment because do you at all regret not running for governor? Many Ohio Democrats believe you should have been in that governor's mansion vetoing that bill rather than not running in 18 and being one of 24 people running for president today. What do you say to that criticism?
Well, it wasn't my time. I didn't, I got a young family, and at that point, I was not prepared to run for a statewide office. And, that obviously changed now. I'm running for president. A lot has changed, really. But, you can't look through the rearview mirror. There's no way to do it. My main point there, Chuck, was that, look, we've got to win elections. We can't have all these outside discussions about the Electoral College or about all these other things. It's like we've got to learn how to win. Win in Ohio, win in Western PA, win in Michigan, win in Wisconsin. We've got to learn how to talk to working class voters. We've got to make sure we connect with them. We've got to make sure we go there. We make sure we have a plan for them. I grew up, I lived my entire life at the epicenter of deindustrialization. There were pro-life people who voted for Democrats because we were so with them on economic issues that they knew we were going to be there on those bread and butter issues around economic growth and retirement and security. But when we stop talking about some of these issues that are really important to them, they default to what are our differences. And that's why we start losing people on some of these cultural issues, because we don't have that robust economic message anymore.
I asked that question because a lot of people are looking today, especially with the addition of Bill de Blasio. You count Mike Gravel, who a bunch of high school kids are trying to get him to run, and you have 24 candidates running for president. And there's a lot of Democrats that look down this list and they sit there and they say, boy, they wish Tim Ryan had run for governor in 18 and been governor. They wish John Hickenlooper would run for the Senate. They wish Steve Bullock would run for the Senate. The point is that everybody seems to be jumping into the fear of missing out on the presidential race. Is there a point of you have too many candidates and it's almost a paralysis for those trying to figure out who to support?
Well, I would encourage Hickenlooper and Bullock to run for Senate too, Chuck.
I bet you would.
Put me in that column. But in all honesty, I think it's going to whittle itself down, and everyone's got to distinguish themselves. And I believe that I've got a distinguishing resume in the fact that I have grown up and spent my whole life just outside of Youngstown, Ohio, watching this economic train wreck happen for 40 years, and the government not do anything about it, the leaders not do anything about it, the leaders of both parties not do anything about it. And I've been bringing back hundreds of millions of dollars to my district to get us positioned in the new economy around additive manufacturing and energy and all of these things. It's not enough. We need a president who's going to structurally change the economy in the United States, and we need people out talking about that. That's what I'm bringing to this race. And I will tell you, when I go to Iowa and I go to New Hampshire and I go down south, this is the message that's resonating with people. They want to win the future and solidify the middle class again, and I'm the one who can do that. All
right, I got to ask you, though, your front runner is Joe Biden. Your rhetoric and Joe Biden's rhetoric sounds very similar. And I think that some would say I'm trying to be complimentary when I say that, meaning it just sounds very similar. What do you bring to the table that Joe Biden doesn't?
Well, as I just said, I've been living this for the last 40 years right here in Youngstown, where I am. The steel mill's closed. The auto plant
Biden would
just
say
closed.
he's been in Scranton. I mean, you say Youngstown, Biden says Scranton.
Yeah, well, I've been doing it now, today, last week, 2 weeks ago, 2 months ago, I was in a union hall crying with people who have lost their job. And I've been thinking about the future and bringing money back to this community around the future, Chuck. I understand better than anybody, I will say, where this economy needs to go, what the opportunities are, and the innovations we need in healthcare, the innovations we need in education, because I've been working in an area where everyone left us here. No one gave a damn about us, Chuck. And so the congressman with the local community had to come together and work on additive manufacturing. I didn't know what additive manufacturing was. Social and emotional learning in the schools, food as medicine, all these innovations that are happening in the world. We learned about them because that's how we position our community for the future. I know that. I've been doing it, and I need to do it at the national level now because there's a movement that has to happen if we're going to save our kids' future. That's really the issue here. What kind of future are they going to have? And right now, it doesn't look very good.
Congressman Tim. Hello, YouTubers. If you're watching this, it means you've checked out our channel, so thank you. Now do me a favor. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there. Click on any of the videos to watch the latest interviews and highlights from MTP Daily and MSNBC. You can get more Beat the Press content every morning in the First Read newsletter. If you're tired of content that you don't know anything about where it came from, you don't have to have that problem with us. NBC News, MSNBC, MTP, and the Meet the Press mindset right here for you on YouTube. Subscribe now.